All right, hello and good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's workshop. My name is Jason Hamilton, and I'm really excited here to be here with you today. Facebook groups recently took the ability for us to stream, directly into the group from our software. So cool. So I'm excited to do these on Zoom. It's a little different, but what's kind of cool is you can just sign up, log into Zoom. You don't have to be on Facebook. If you want to do some other things and have them nearby, you can do that. And what's also nice is, we're going to be doing some things here to actually a little bit of a live action type of thing. So what's nice is the chat here works actually a lot better, I think, than the Facebook overall. So cool. So we're going to try it out. So thank you all so much for joining. Looks like we're getting people logging in here. What I really want to help you do today, okay? This is our big goal today, right? Is, it's now June, okay? So you can say it's late spring or early summer, but we're going to work on some spring cleaning, okay? We're going to work on our spring cleaning for our finances, and we're going to start to get things in order, because the foundation of any good financial plan, or if you're somebody who's looking to retire in the next 5 years, or maybe you just retired, if you are not organized, it just leads to so much more stress, so much more chaos, just that feeling of just wondering, if you have everything in order. By getting these things in order, it's going to be much, much better for you over time. So thank you so much for joining today. I really appreciate it. And I think we might go a couple levels deeper on this. So I'm going to ask for some feedback after this workshop. And if you liked it, we can go a little bit deeper and do some more specific organization. And so we're going to jump in today and go over today's content. And then from here, like I said, if there is a desire to go deeper to organizing your financial life further through things like creating a cash flow plan or organizing our whole financial situation, specifically with all of our accounts, we can talk about that. So thank you all so much for joining today. I'm going to have this Q&A. Good. Thank you guys for being patient. Okay, so we're going to be doing more of these on Zoom. So now that I got this figured out, it'll be a lot more fun. This is just a little bit new. And so I'm, really working to provide some more content for everybody. And for those of you that don't know me, I'm just going to share just really quickly a little bit of kind of where I come from with all this stuff. There's more information on my website, and you're welcome to look at this. But, the reality of why I do what I do. Why did I become a certified financial planner? Why did I start a firm to help people with their finances? Honestly, it's because my mom got completely ripped off, taken advantage of, and I just want to help as many people as possible. Okay, I can't have everybody as my client. But what I can do is help you through things like these trainings, or giving you resources, or helping you see like what is the right way to do things and what's the wrong way to do things, what might be a scam or what might not be a scam. So if you are in our Facebook groups, that's great. I'm going to put the links to those at the end here. If you're not in our Facebook groups, I'd really love for you to join. And then after this training, what I'd love to see is, what's something you've taken away that really helped you out in this workshop. The other side is, I really want you to have a community when it comes to, being somebody who's planning for retirement or just in the retirement, because I know what it's like to feel alone. Maybe you don't have anybody around you that you can talk to. A lot of our clients are like in the middle of, nowhere in a lot of places, so they might only have a small office to talk with. And you probably aren't getting the best financial guidance when it comes to your little world. So being in the groups here, you'll get some feedback. You can ask questions. You can participate. I do my best to answer as many questions as I can. And we continue to provide these workshops and training to help you get better. So without further ado, looks like everything's working. Everything's doing what we want to do. So let's jump in here and let's get this workshop going. Okay, I think this will be fun, right? Good. So the name of this workshop, okay, this workshop actually evolved from one of the coaching programs that I have. So we're a financial firm. We do investment management, retirement planning, all those great things. But we also have an academy called Keep It Simple Wealth Academy, where we provide courses. And so this spurred out of that, where I mostly do those courses for young people. So if you know young people, especially men right now, I'm really looking to help some young men out. We have a program called The Wealthy Gentleman, where we help them, learn how to manage their money, learn how to optimize whatever they do have, and become powerful wealth managers. But what I found is by helping people start by getting organized, it was just such a better foundation for everything else that we talk about, because sometimes our brains, the way our brains operate is a little bit chaotic if we just aren't organized. And so until we get things organized, we can't get our brains focusing on like the big picture of where we want to go, what we want to do, and how to really optimize and use our wealth and our resources. So today we're going to talk about forging order from chaos, getting organized. And what I found is most of you are actually relatively pretty good when it comes to organization. Most of you are relatively good at managing your money, but you're here because you always want to get better. So I think that's probably a big chunk of everybody today, and that's okay. But for those of you that need a little bit more help, we're here for you, okay? We're going to start from the ground up. And I really hope you got my email ahead of time. Then I recommended that you pull all your documents together that you could in just one folder, and then to get 6 more folders together if you can, okay? So we are gonna talk about like real life document organization, and then I'm gonna show you a digital system that you can just copy, because that will be some homework for you to take to the next level. And that's where you can get really, really organized. So like I said, the name of this presentation is Forging Order from Chaos, and we're gonna dive right in. Before we do, I always have to put my disclosures up here. None of this is meant to be specific financial advice for you. It's not tax advice, legal advice. It's for education purposes only. Retirement, retirement is really supposed to be a time for you. So most people here are probably somewhere near retirement, or they're within retirement for a few years, and you are probably feeling a little bit less organized than you want to, right? And that's why you're here. But the reality is you've worked hard, you've saved, and now it's time to enjoy those fruits of your labor. But what I find is, when you have financial worries, you're worried about having enough money or just being organized, this can really cast a shadow of doubt on your golden years that are supposed to be some of the best times for you. So today we're going to focus on eliminating that stress and embracing true financial freedom. So can anybody answer in the chat here? Like, this is for somebody to be honest, okay? And this chat will not be shared. So you can be, it's up to you, but you can be full disclosure. Does anybody have like a desk like this, or like a pile of mail or a pile of bills? And it just feels a little bit like financial chaos, right? Can anybody relate to that? I've been there before, okay? I'm somebody, like, the reason why I do this, the reason why I teach this stuff is to hold myself accountable. I'm somebody who didn't grow up in like the most optimal financial household, right? So for those of you that know me, for many years, I was with a single mom of 4 kids. My mom worked in restaurants pretty much her whole life, and she worked off tips, so we had variable income. I never say I felt like poor, but because we always had food, we always had clothing and things like that. But we had a pile like this, the desk would look like this sometimes. And so it's not natural for me per se, but I've gotten much better at it. And what I've learned to do is develop systems. And as long as you have a system for everything, if you just follow that system and you commit to that and be disciplined, then everything else seems to work out. And so when I put my original post up, this is something that I had to go through myself and get in order. And now that I have systems, it's just easy. But I will say that I am very disciplined. I didn't naturally, no one ever taught me these things, but I am very disciplined to where, like, if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it, barring, things happen, right? I know life happens sometimes. But if I say I'm going to organize my documents, every time I get a piece of mail, it's going to go in a folder, then that's exactly what we're going to do. So if you are in chaos a little bit, Nanette said we might want to ask who doesn't, right? I think that's a great point. But if you're here and you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed and a little bit in chaos, don't worry, okay? You're around friends, you're around people that know you, that love you, and Michelle said it goes to trash. Yeah, absolutely. But there are things we need to keep, right? So what we're going to talk about today is like, hey, what should we keep? What do we need to be aware of? And what should we, get rid of essentially? So, but does this sound like you? So are you somebody who struggles to locate important financial documents, or maybe managing your money and all your accounts, is causing you anxiety? If you're near retirement, you might have like 4, 5, or 6 different investment accounts. You might have multiple bank accounts, different CD accounts, and if that's causing you anxiety, then we really need to get these things together. And if you're unsure about your financial future, the best thing you can do to start is to get everything organized. And once you can see what you have, now you can start to figure out, okay, well, based on what I have, what are my options? And the last question here is, are you unsure what documents you should keep? Okay, and that's something, I gave you a checklist, so I think everybody got that checklist in their initial email. And unfortunately, this is my fault, I'm gonna take ownership of it. There's supposed to be an email that goes out after today's workshop that has a link and some other things. It actually went out at 3:30 this morning Pacific versus 3:30 in the afternoon. But there's a link in there as well to my folder system, and I'll go over that with you as well so that we can get things organized digitally. So we're going to start with just creating, a path to financial clarity. And we're going to discuss some tools and some strategies for staying more organized. I think we all would feel better being a little bit more organized. So in this workshop, in this webinar, we're going to talk about how to organize your financial documents and records. We're going to use this information to help you streamline your budget and cash flow. We're going to talk about setting and achieving clear financial goals. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about simplifying your investment portfolio and your retirement savings. I see this as like one of the biggest barriers is like people's portfolios are very complicated, way too complicated, And also they have way too many retirement accounts. So I'm going to share with you some of the mistakes that I see there, and we'll talk about that. And the big picture here is we want to reduce your financial stress and just through decluttering. Okay? And so whoever mentioned there, just throw it all away. Honestly, Michelle, throw it in. Some things just need to throw in the trash. I would recommend you shred things, by the way, because these are financial documents we're talking about. We don't want somebody to get your stuff and hopefully, potentially steal that information. But sometimes you just got to get rid of stuff, throw it in the trash and start over. And sometimes that is totally fine to do. So step one here, we want to gather and sort. Okay, so the best thing that I've seen people do is let's just get everything in one pile, right? And let's get a pile of paperwork together in one place. And then we want to look at, what sort of locations we're going to use to store these things, okay? And so if you have a filing cabinet, a drawer, don't overcomplicate these things. We really don't need to overcomplicate these things at all. We can keep this very simple. I have a file cabinet that I then keep locked up somewhere else. If you have a little drawer you like to keep things to, if you're somebody who has a gun safe, you're one of those folks, that is something that whatever you prefer to do is fine. But you want to keep those somewhere they're easily accessible, that you can get to at any time, and it keeps you relatively stress-free when it comes to that. And then the next thing is most of our lives today are digital, right? We're much more digital today than we were in the past. And so that is something as well that we want to make sure that we are having a digital storage system. So I'm going to go over that with you today. So you want to have a digital system to categorize everything. Because like I said, digital, there's a lot of benefits to it. It's nice to have a file cabinet, and there's certain things that we're probably going to have to keep there. But I would really prefer to have most things digital. So we're going to go over that as well. So in your emails, you should have gotten a checklist, right? And we're going to pull this up in just a second. Let me pull this up here. You should have gotten a checklist that gives you an idea of what documents you need to keep on file. And I'm going to pull this up here. We're going to go over this a little bit here. So did everybody get this? Everybody should have got this when you originally enrolled here for the workshop, okay? I'm a big fan of checklists. I find that the more checklists that I have, the more organized I am, the better systems I have. So if you've ever worked with me before, I think some of our clients are here, you might have seen me send you a checklist before, helping you with some things, or bringing these up on our calls when we review things. Because if you have a checklist for what you need to do and when, then all you need to do is follow the checklist. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? And so a big part of what we want to do is just have a system that works for us. So you should all have this checklist in your email, and I'll send it out again. And actually, you're going to have a link to it after this is over. But this checklist, I think, is a really, really good foundation for what you need to have and keep in place. So for some of you, pretty much everybody, probably you're filing a tax return, right? So if we're filing a tax return, let me see if I can do this the way I want to do it here. Let's see, can I draw? Maybe not. Yeah, I guess not. So the first thing we want to do is make sure we have, our tax documents in place. Every single year, guess what? You're going to have to get your tax documents in place and file a tax return, right? I think we all know that. We just came through tax season. Some of you might still be in tax season on an extension. That could be the case. But one of the things we all need to do every year is file our taxes, okay? And there's also some very specific things that when it comes to filing our taxes, you want to make sure you have in place and for retirees. So we'll talk about that as well. But the first thing is you want to say, answer this checklist, just pull this out and print this out. Did anybody, I'm seeing some people saying they didn't get it and some people say they did. So interesting. So if you want to check the original email that you got sent after you signed up, not the Zoom email, I should have sent you a follow-up email. It should have been from my info at Keep It Simple Financial email. Check that because some people got it here, so I'm pretty sure it went out. Yeah, there's a few people that got it, but it may have went to spam, okay? So you might want to check your spam, and there's a link there that says, hey, get these 6 folders ready, and then download this checklist, okay? So the idea is that each one of these categories here, right? Tax documents, legal documents, healthcare documents, asset and debt related, and then other documents, right? These are going to align with the folders that I want you to get together. Okay, so a couple things to be aware of is that if you're filing a tax return, which probably everybody is, you want to keep at least 3 years, of state and federal returns on file, and all your supporting documentation. Okay, depending on which state you're in. So I know there's somebody else here in Southern California. So in California, we need to keep it for longer than 3 years because you have a statute of limitations where they can go back and get you. In California, I believe it's 4 years. Okay. So these are things that you just want to keep on file. I personally keep my stuff for like 7 or 8 years, but this is just kind of a minimum, that you want to keep on file. So you want to take one of your folders, label it tax documents, and let's just start by getting everything in there, okay? And right now you might have some paper and probably a lot digital at this point, but again, this is just a place to start. Next thing here is if you think you forgot to report income and it's more than 25% of your gross income, you might want to keep your returns on file for 6 years, right? So this is just a little bit of, kind of tips here for you. And then as well, if you're claiming a loss for worthless securities or bad debt deduction, keep those on record for 7 years, right? And if you are earning a W-2 because you work a job, keeping this until you begin collecting Social Security would be a really good idea. So you know what? Let me try something here. Maybe I can upload this file to the chat here. Let me see if I can get that done. That might actually work so I can get you guys this file because I would like you to have this file if I can. Chat here. Let's see. Chat. Not let me really do that. Okay. So anyways, I was going to try to drop the file in the chat. There's some way to do it here, but it's not letting me do it right now. So anyways, I will get you this. Okay. So if you don't have it, I will get it to you. So don't worry about that. But you want to keep all your W-2s until you begin collecting Social Security. Can anybody tell me in the chat why this might be important? Can anybody tell me why this might be important to keep all your W-2s until retirement? And I'll answer Patty's question. So Patty said it came in a separate email from the reminder, but the same day. Yes, Patty, exactly. So the email, you got a Zoom email, and then I hooked you up on just an email list so I can send you a couple emails to follow up. You should have gotten the email the same day like Patty said. So same day, probably right after you signed up, within like 5 or 10 minutes. And then Patty asked, where can I find what our state requires? She's in Illinois. Honestly, Google is your best friend, right? Probably Google will tell you. But Tad, I had my first reason for getting the W-2s, Social Security. So when you go to apply for Social Security, you want to go through and verify your earnings record. And what I've seen, I wouldn't say a ton of times, to be honest with you, but probably a half dozen times, is where people have different income reported on their Social Security earnings history than they have actually earned. And so if it's underreported, then what can happen is you may actually not get all the Social Security you're entitled to, right? And so these are things that, I really want to make sure that if it's possible that you're getting, all the Social Security that you're entitled to, okay? So that's the main reason. Pam said audit. I think that can be really important as well. Aaron got the answer there. Yeah, audit can be important too, but, audit's a relatively low percentage. But if you're going to be in retirement here very soon, you're probably going to be applying for Social Security, and even $100 a month. We have to remember that could be $1,200 a year, right? $1,200 a year is a plane ticket, or maybe 2 plane tickets for you to go on a vacation. So I want you to get everything that's owed to you, okay? And then the next thing here is, have you made any taxable gifts or received an inheritance, okay? So when you have a 709, what a 709 is, that's a gift tax type of return. So if you didn't know, you can give up to $18,000 per person, per member of your household, you could say. So if you're married, you can give up to $18,000 each, so $36,000 to each person, unlimited number of people. But if you go over $18,000, you might need to file what's called a 709, and that's a gift tax return. And then 706 is when somebody passes away. So the way they taught me this in my CFP test prep was think about 6 feet under, right? When someone passes away, you go 6 feet under. That's a 706. And if you get money from somebody, you're getting a gift like $18,000, you might be on cloud 9, so that's a 709. So that's how I remember those two things. But those things you want to keep on file for sure, and make sure that you're getting those filed each year. Okay. So in your tax documents folder, you want to just get everything in there to start, right? And then healthcare documents, if you're applying for Medicaid, right? So this could be important for retirees. If you're applying for Medicaid, well, then you may you may want to make sure that you have all the information you need so that you don't have a problem when you go to apply for Medicaid, because they're going to ask for possibly the previous 5 years of all your records and documentation for Medicaid. There's generally a 5-year look back period. So if you are somebody that's going to think about applying for Medicaid, you probably want to have all this stuff in place. Okay, here's another one. Okay, so do you have a health savings account? For those of you that don't know, health savings accounts are what are called triple tax advantaged. That means you get a tax deduction when you contribute to a health savings account. You can actually invest your money in many accounts now, and you can grow that money tax deferred. And then when you take the money out to pay for things like medical expenses, which now it's a lot of things that qualify, by the way, then that money's tax free. So it's kind of like an IRA, but you can use it for medical expenses. I recently found out you can actually use it to pay your Medicare. You can reimburse yourself for Medicare from HSA. So that's a new one that I found out just recently watching an HSA workshop. So there's a lot of things you can do with your HSA account, but if you're somebody who's not retired yet and you're contributing to your HSA, a really good, you can call it a trick of the trade or just kind of a financial hack, is to pay for your medical expenses out of your cash flow, out of your pocket, and then keep those receipts. And then inside of your HSA, invest that money, right? And let that money grow for any number of years that you want. Remember the rule of 72. If you earn a 7.2% average return, your money is going to double every 10 years. So you can leave this money in there pretty much as long as you want. You don't want to leave it, past death generally, but you want to make sure you have accounting for all your medical expenses, because that is something that you can reimburse yourself for at any time. A really good use for an HSA that I found as well is for those of you that want to retire early, right? And you want to retire early. What I mean by that is before you qualify for Medicare, and you have to be more concerned about your income at that point. So if you need some extra income and you have a bunch of medical receipts piled up and you save those in a digital file or your file somewhere, you can reimburse yourself, take some money out of that account and use that for living cash flow needs, right? So there's a lot of things we can do here, but we want to make sure we have our records in order, because as many of you mentioned, an audit could be possible, and we want to make sure that we are doing the right things, okay? So here, did you write off any medical expenses on your tax return? If so, keep those records for as long as you keep your tax return, generally 3 years. If you're on Medicare, consider the following: keep your keep your Medicare summary notices for at least a year or until your bill is paid in full. And if you're enrolled in an employer drug plan that is considered creditable, keep your annual noticeable credible coverage provided by your employer. This is needed if you enroll in Part D at a later time. So these are things you want to make sure that you have in place, okay? So tax documents, healthcare, legal documents here. Keep a copy of your Social Security card and your passport and birth certificate. This is really important because I actually had some clients that I helped, this is a number of years ago, but this is when we had some big fires in California. So I helped them complete their financial plan. And then we did a big organization with them, and they actually uploaded all their documents to we have a portal we provide for clients. They uploaded everything there, and they had a copy of their birth certificates, their Social Security cards, and everything that they needed. And then literally within like 2 months after we completed their financial plan, there was a big fire up in Paradise, California. And they got a phone call from the fire department saying, grab your pets, grab only what you need, get the hell out of your house. The fire is going to be in your area in less than 10 minutes. And so they had to grab their dogs and their keys, and they ran out the door. And as they were going down the hill, there were multiple times that the fire was coming up where they thought they might have to get out of their car and make a run for it. Luckily, they made it down, but they basically lost everything. But because they went through and they took our advice and they got organized and they put everything in files, they had digital copies of everything, which made recovering their life a whole lot easier than having to start at ground zero. So this is another reason why you want to make sure you take the time to do this after this training. It's good for that. It could be good for a plumbing issue. There's been tornadoes. There's all kinds of things that can happen. So having these things in one place, you want to make sure you have those there. Okay. For foreign national, keep all documents related to that. If you have an estate plan, these are some of the things you want to just keep forever, right? So keep a copy of your will, trust, power of attorney, so your general and healthcare, your living will, beneficiary designations on file, and store the originals in a safe place. And also consider giving copies to people that play an important role in your estate plan, such as your agents, executors, and trustees, right? If you're married, copy of your marriage certificate, just in case you need it and change, in case of name change, proof of marriage for insurance benefits, or obtaining a joint mortgage. If you have a prenup agreement, you might want to keep a copy of that in place. If you've been divorced, this can be really important, okay? So I work with a lot of women in retirement, and many of them had been married for 10 years or more, but they're now divorced. Well, if you've been married for 10 years or more, and your ex-husband's, or your ex-spouse, it goes both ways, by the way, your ex-spouse has a larger Social Security benefit than half of yours, you can actually claim on their benefit. And you can actually claim theirs before you claim your own as well. So you may want to make sure that you are keeping those divorce papers on file because you might need those. Military service, keep that there. And if you have a safe deposit box, keep the information on how to find and access that, okay? All right, I'm going to pause here for any questions. Yeah, so it looks like, how did your client digitize your documents? We'll talk about that. Okay, so I'll get to that. All right, so asset and debt related documents. Do you have any investment accounts or bank accounts? If so, you want to keep your most current statements on file. So what I recommend, we'll talk a little about kind of this process we get here, but just have a regular schedule for yourself, whether it's monthly, quarterly, that you commit to. You want to keep all your end of year statements on file. If you have investments purchased before 2012, the year that custodians were required to track cost basis. So what cost basis is if you have, let's say, some single stocks or even mutual funds, and you bought them a long time ago, and now they've gone up in value. Your cost basis is what you paid for it. The current value will be a different number generally, and the amount in the middle you have to pay capital gain on. If you can't prove your cost basis, you might have to pay capital gain on the whole thing. So you want to make sure you keep these records just in case, as a 1099 may not report that cost basis. If you have retirement accounts, you want to keep all these documents here. Make sure you keep everything there. If you made a Roth conversion, you want to keep the records showing that. Those have become very popular lately. And so if you did that, you want to keep records showing that so that you can prove that. Here's a big one. If you made a non-deductible traditional IRA contribution, which means, let's say you earn too much to take a deduction on an IRA, and then you convert that money to a Roth IRA. That's called a backdoor Roth IRA contribution. You want to keep the Form 8606. That'll be in your tax return where you report the basis on that. You want to keep that until the account is fully withdrawn. That's really, really important. But many of you close to retirement, not as important, but for any young people here, to keep that. There's some things here if you're a business owner, and then anything here about your debts, okay? So you want to have a file that has your asset and debt-related documents. And there's some things here about your property, any things here around if you're self-employed, you deduct your home office, any improvements to your home. This is a big one, okay? We've seen real estate property go up quite a bit in the last number of years. So I'm running into more and more clients that have earned more than the $250,000 exclusion you get for a single filing client, and the $500,000 exclusion you get from home equity gain for a joint filing client. So I'm seeing this over and over right now, and the more you can prove that you have as far as improvements you make to your home, that all goes into the basis of your house. And so you might be able to save a lot of taxes by doing that. So this might be another good project. This could be a project on its own as to go through and document all that. What I've seen as well is that you can even keep a spreadsheet for that. As long as you have the spreadsheet and the dates, that will probably be accepted. I can't guarantee that. And again, this is not tax advice, but I know you probably don't have receipts from 20 years ago. Okay. But if you can go through and document everything that you've done to your home and then submit that to your tax professional, you might be able to save a lot of money on those capital gain taxes. Some information here about records in multiple states if you have properties there. And then this is one I didn't think about. I had this checklist, but just any records of, any certifications you had, college work, because those might be used to, let's say go back to school, get a job, maybe get a promotion. And then I personally would have a separate folder for your insurance policies, but we're going to break it down like this, and we're going to just use this system. And then digitally, I'm going to show you how I break it down and have everything there separate. Okay. And again, if you're currently employed, any contracts, any non-solicits or whatever it may be. So everybody should hopefully have this in your email. And if you don't, we'll get it to you. But I think I'm pretty sure that I sent it to you. So now, what documents do you need to keep on file? Start with this checklist. And I want you to take out your 6 folders that I recommend you get them and label them the following: tax documents, healthcare documents, legal documents, assets, debts, and insurance documents. Okay. And then we'll have our miscellaneous folder. So just kind of keep it, in this order. And this is just a system to start with. If you want to, create your own system, that's fine. But just start with mine. Make things easy for yourself, because then if you have questions, you can drop them in the group and I will answer those, or someone else can answer those as well. And if you want to customize the system, more power to you. You can definitely do that, but I would say for now, just start with what we're recommending. So now, I did tell you, and I did mention, this is going to be an interactive workshop. So for those of you that gathered your documents together, I want us to do what we're going to do, a 5-minute sprint, okay? So in the tech world, I have some clients in the tech business, and they do something called sprints, where they just do work all together for a very short amount of time, and then they all come back and then they check in with each other. So I want to give you 5 minutes to work on this right now. Whether you create your folders, I want you to take at least one step, towards being better organized. Whether you create your folders, whether you actually had your folders together, you have all your documents in place and you're ready to organize them, wherever you're personally at, we're going to take 5 minutes right now. So I want you to do everything you can in the next 5 minutes to get yourself organized, okay? So if you have any questions, drop them in the chat. Good job. So how did that feel? Did you actually get something done today that wasn't done prior to our workshop today? Did you at least get a little bit more organized before before you get off this webinar today? Hopefully, you didn't just sit there and do nothing. So, good. Well, hopefully you got something done that brought you a little bit more organization and a little bit more forward to your life of finding that calm confidence of having everything financially organized. So now we're going to talk a little bit about going digital. So when it comes to being digital, I know that probably the majority of you here grew up before this was like a thing, right? So this is a skill you've had to learn over your lifetime. Whereas the kids that are growing up today, they literally grow up with a cell phone, in their hand when they come out of the womb, it seems like. Right? And so going digital is something that there's a lot of benefits to it. It can also be overwhelming, and we still are receiving some things in person and some things digital. So what I've tried to do today is design a system to help you align which we can call, your real life here with the folders that we have started, and then also, have a digital system to use things digitally when it's just easier sometimes to just get your statements in PDF form, upload them, call it a day versus printing everything out, and then filing it away. So now a couple of good reasons I think to go digital are one, to avoid losing your documents. How many of you have ever lost a document that was important? I know I have. And so having things scanned digitally, I usually try to have a backup copy of all my hard copy documents digitally. I don't get any sort of insurance statements usually in any sort of digital form. They're almost all hard copy. But what I'll do is I'm going to show you how to scan those in actually with your phones, but I will take a copy of that and then upload that to my insurance folder anytime I get a new one. The number two is you can access anywhere. So the nice thing about digital is that you can access these things on your phone anywhere you're at in the world generally. So if something were to come up, let's say, for example, you lost your ID or your insurance card or your passport, well, at least you can pull up a digital copy if you have a system that you actually followed that you can access. And then the third thing is it's just much easier to manage large amounts of data. And so if you're somebody who has a complicated financial situation and you have a lot of data, having things digital is going to be so much easier than just having a massive file with a bunch of printouts. So that's kind of a good reason. Okay, so where do we start? So I am offering you to steal my system. Okay, you can steal this system. Then you can take it and do whatever you want with it and make it your own. But in your email, you will receive a link to our example digital filing system. So you can feel free to borrow it and change it to suit your needs on whatever platform you prefer. Okay. So like I mentioned earlier when we started, the email actually went out at 3:30 this morning Pacific versus 3:30 p.m. It's supposed to be a follow-up email. But anyways, you should all have this in your email. And if not, I'll send it again. Okay. So let's review this. And this is, again, a system that it's designed to align with what we're doing here. I don't want to have to create a whole new system. So what I have it set up in is a tool called Google Drive. So if you've never used Google Drive before, it's free up to a certain point. And all you need to do is just sign up for Google email. Okay, so anybody can get this for free. If you prefer something like Dropbox or even your own computer, that's okay. You could just copy this, okay? So this is aligned. I'm going to zoom this in a little bit here. This is aligned with exactly the document that I just showed you, right? So you're all going to have that checklist. And then here, I have aligned this personal folder so you can just copy and paste it, right? That's all you need to do to align with everything that's on that folder. But I've also taken the folder system to another level to be a lot more organized, okay? So before we jump into this, actually, it was somebody who asked a question here. I think it was, I don't know who it was, maybe Patty. But someone asked, how do I get my documents in digitally, right? So there's a couple ways. If you have a scanner at home and you're comfortable using a scanner to your computer, great. This is my preferred method, okay? And if you have an iPhone or an iPad, this is a really, really easy way to get your documents digitally. And this is what I do all the time, super easy, okay? So what you'll do is you open your Notes app on your phone. Okay, so you might have used your Notes app. It's a little yellow kind of app, on your phone there. And you open your Notes app, and then you hit the camera button. So if any of you have iPhones, you can take out your iPhones or your iPads, hit the camera button, and then right there, it'll offer you to tap Scan Documents. And all you need to do is place your document in view of the camera. You hold your phone over the document, and then if your device is in auto mode, it'll automatically scan. If not, you just press the button, but most everybody's is in auto mode. And if you need to manually capture, you just tap the shutter button right there, or press one of the volume buttons. And then you can just drag the corners and make it adjust to fit the page. and then press tap to keep the scan. And then you can either save right there, or you can just line up your documents and then just go one by one and just get them all scanned in. This is the easiest way to scan in a bunch of documents and get them in digital form. And then they're in your notes. And then what I would normally do is just take them either from your computer and transfer them to your, take them from your phone and transfer them to your computer. If you have a Mac, an Apple computer, you can open up your Notes app and just grab the documents right out of the note there because it'll transfer over. If you don't, you can actually take the documents from here, save them on your phone, and then you can upload to Google Drive or whatever system that you want, okay? So this is a really easy way to do it. So hopefully, I think most people here have iPhones, but that's usually the case. So I would recommend doing that, okay? So now, going back to our file system here. We call it I have it called my example personal folders. This is something you could just totally steal. Just copy it, make your life easy. Copy it, and then when you want to change it for yourself, great. But as you see here, we have just like the worksheet is outlined, right? We have our assets and debt, healthcare, legal, other, and tax documents, right? So this is in a alphabetical order, but it'll organize it however you like. And then inside this folder, I have another copy of the checklist, right? So I'll be sending this out as well. So everybody should get this after. If you don't get it, let me know. We'll send it to you, okay? But if you go into your assets and debt folder here, you can see I've added a layer of organization. So when it comes to your paper documents, if you want to have this many folders in a file cabinet, and keep everything in person, more power to you. For me, I prefer to use a digital system because it's just much easier to keep organized. So you have your bank statements here, any business documents, any debts you might have. And if you click on the debts, I guess not there. Investment statements, keep a copy of your net worth or balance sheets, your primary home documents. I don't know what I have in there. I guess nothing there. And then your rental properties and any vehicle documents. So anything under assets or debt will be in this folder. Go to your healthcare documents. That here is just an open folder there, so put whatever there. Legal documents. Now here I've broken this down between your citizenship documents. So your birth certificate, driver's license, passport, social security card. And then you have your estate plan here. And you can just put your estate plan there as a whole. And then tax documents here. If you have any claim losses, income tax returns, or taxable gifts or inheritance, that's all listed there for you. And then you have the other folder here, contracts, education documents, certifications, and insurance documents in here. I just lined this up so it matched the worksheet. If you want to change it around, you can do that. But let me know in the chat, is this helpful if I were to give you this system and you could just copy it? Is this kind of, is this something you think you can utilize if you had a system like this? Perfect. Love it. Yeah. So Patty said, I feel like someone has to break into my house to get my information, and that is my file. But anyone can hack a system to get access to digital copy. How do you trust it's going to be secure? I wouldn't say anybody can hack a system. Google Drive, or Dropbox or whatever other system you want are generally not easily hackable, okay? Not saying it couldn't happen. And again, this is up to you. I'm just trying to give you an opportunity to follow the system that I use. And if it works for you, great. If you want to keep everything paper, Patty, because you're more comfortable, that's okay too. This is your financial life. All I'm trying to do is help make your life easier. I personally am comfortable with a digital system and I prefer it. But this is where it comes to, having really good passwords and everything, Patty, because that's the way someone would probably break into it if you have a bad password, And, one of the things that, I've seen lately is scams have gone up. So things like you might get a phone call saying, your system's been hacked. I send you an email and click on this link so that we can help you. Never, ever click on a link somebody sends you from an email unless it's a known and trusted source, right? So these are things where if you get things stolen off your computer, it's probably something that you allowed to happen because you gave into it. If in your house, for me, it's like someone could just break a window and come in and steal something, right? I personally feel more comfortable digitally because my passwords are pretty extensive. But to each your own. This is just for me to give you a system to help you out, okay? So here's some tips for staying organized. After this workshop, I would really like you to go in and create your own digital filing system or steal ours. The second thing is developing a routine, right? I want you to develop a routine to regularly file documents, right? So I think, setting aside some time monthly or quarterly to file all your new documents would be really smart for you to do, and even put it on your calendar until it becomes a habit. But don't let the paperwork pile up. You and I both know that a pile of paper is not serving you. It's not keeping you calm. It's not keeping you feeling relaxed. So anytime you get it, just develop this thing where it's like Jason said, I got to do it. I got to do it. I got to do it, and just get it done. Anything that takes you less than 2 minutes to do, that's going to actually improve your financial life, should just be done in the moment, right? Don't let that mail just sit there and pile up, okay? And next, regularly file and purge. So at least annually, go through your files and discard any outdated or unnecessary documents. That's a really good thing to do to make sure you keep things on track and that you don't, bring up a pile of junk that you don't need anymore. So here's some additional tips. And this one, especially for you, Patty, right? If you're somebody who's more concerned, and you should do this anyways, by the way, but consider a password manager. So you want something to securely store your login information for your online accounts. I know they're available sometimes in like the Google Chrome browser, or Apple has one through their keychain. You can also do something like 1Password or LastPass. Something to store these passwords, because if you make your passwords too simple because you want to remember them all, and you maybe keep 2 or 3 the same, or you might just change one character. If somebody gets into one account, it's going to be a whole lot easier for them to get in other accounts. So I want you to avoid that if possible. So you want to make sure you use some sort of password manager for all your digital accounts. Next is create an inventory. Make a list of all your financial accounts and where to find the related documents. You can use just like a spreadsheet for that if you want to. You can use a piece of paper. It doesn't have to be super fancy. You can use a fancy digital system, right? And these are all things that you can do depending on how organized you want to be. And then lastly, if you're overwhelmed, seek the help of a professional organizer or financial advisor, because you might need some help to get this stuff done. And as it says at the bottom there, remember, getting organized is a process, not a one-time event. So start small, focus on one area at a time, and gradually build a system that works for you. In my world, we talk about the concept of habit stacking, okay? So what habit stacking is just building foundational habits in place one by one. And then as you get one locked in and consistent, then you can add the second one. So one thing I like to tell people is just get one thing going. Do that thing for a week, do that thing for a month, okay? And then add the next thing. If you just did one new habit per month, you'd have 12 new habits per year. If you did one new habit per week, you'd have 52 new habits per year. And so these are things that compound over time by being consistent. The bigger thing is not how many things you do, it's how many things you do well and consistently. So I'd rather have you do 5 things perfectly than 20 things kind of, half button it, right? So I want you to start small and build. All right, so next we're going to talk about setting and achieving clear financial goals near retirement. And this is kind of a step-by-step process for you. So I really want to lay this out to give you something to sit down and to go away with from this training and say, hey, this is what I need to do to set these goals for myself and get clear on what I want to do next, right? I think it's really important to do that. So the first is to define your vision of retirement. What do you want this next stage to look like for you? And I don't want you to dream small. Some people say, well, I can live on as little as. What if you said, well, hey, let me just imagine my ideal retirement. Where do I want to live? What do you want to do and who do you want to spend time with? Let's just start by dreaming big. And then from there, we want to be specific and want to translate those dreams into tangible goals. So instead of saying, hey, I just want to travel more, get very, very specific, right? Specify. I want to take a European cruise in November 2024. Or I want to visit my grandchildren every summer. I really like that one there, right? So I'm going to set that on my calendar for every July 4th I'm going to spend with my grandchildren. And then, the third thing to consider here is considering your values. So you really want to just align your goals with what truly matters to you, whether it's family, adventure, giving back, or personal growth. And I think, having things in order of importance is really good to really line those things out and say, okay, if something happened to me next year or in 5 years from now, what would I maybe regret not doing? Bring those goals to the front and let's work on those bucket list items like the first things that we do. One thing that I've seen in my world, a few times, more than I'd like to see, is that people have plans, but they put off those plans for whatever reason. And then when it's, they feel it's time to do it, well, now something's happened. They may have hurt their knee or injured their back or whatever it may be, and they just can't do what they used to be able to do 3 or 4 or 5 years earlier. So I think it's really important to line your goals out, get really clear on what you want to do and when, and then to make sure that you're doing the most important things first. So we're going to start with that. And then number 2 is we need to assess your current financial situation. So this is what we're talking about here today, right? Gathering information, get everything together, get really clear on your overall picture, calculate your net worth, make sure you have a good snapshot of your financial standing, and then take a clear look at your income and expenses. If you have a folder or a file where you're tracking all your bills in there, maybe you want to create a spreadsheet and just track, okay, here's what my average utilities have been, what my average food has been, my average dining out has been. these things are really, really helpful as you're going to make this transition to see like, what do I really want to spend in retirement? Because many people say they're going to reduce expenses. But what I find is the first 5 to 10 years, a lot of people spend more than they spent prior to retirement. Number one reason is they have more free time. A lot of times people were working, 8 hours a day plus driving, and now they have this free time. So they end up spending more the first number of years. Over time, things do dip down a little bit, but these whole things you see online will, plan for 80% of your pre-retirement income. That could be the case if you're a big saver, but I think a lot of people end up spending more the first few years at least. That's what I've seen. So we want to make sure you understand that. Okay, and then next we want to establish what we call SMART goals. Okay, this is probably everybody's heard this if you've been in the corporation, but it actually is a really good format. The first thing is being very specific, so clearly defining each goal, like what you want to do, having them be measurable. So what is that outcome? Is it save $10,000, pay off $20,000 in debt? Quantify that. You want to make sure they're achievable. I want them to all be a stretch, but I want you to be somewhat realistic so that you can actually, achieve these goals. Make sure they're relevant to your values and align with your vision. And then make sure they all have some sort of time-bound setting on them. So everything you want to have some sort of time-bound of when you're going to do that. So let's talk a little bit more what that might look like. Okay, so here's an example of a vague goal. Save more for retirement. Here's an example of a SMART goal. Contribute an additional $500 per month to my retirement account over the next 5 years to reach a balance of $200,000, right? So it's specific, it's time-bound, it's relevant, it's attainable. So these are all things that encompass a good SMART goal. So once you kind of get a clear picture of what you want to do and when, let's write SMART goals for each of those things so that we can actually have a kind of a track to run on to take action on them to create those and get some things in place for you. So if your goal is to retire in 5 years and you want to have X dollars of spending per month, well, then you need to work your way backwards and figure out what you need to save, when you might need to time Social Security. And there's some other questions, if you have pensions and things like that come in. But without a destination, it's really hard to figure out what the journey needs to be. So, right, and then from there, we need to develop this action plan. Prioritize. What's most important? Let's tackle that first. And then sometimes we have these big goals that may feel overwhelming. I really like the idea of taking big goals and breaking those down into smaller, manageable steps. And then with those manageable steps, you can break those down all the way down to daily tasks, for example. And so if you can break down, any large goal, if you could just break it down into its smallest parts, it's kind of like what they say, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. If you have big goals, breaking those things down into smaller steps that are more manageable, it can make it feel like more realistic, like you're going to make progress on the way there. And then from there, we want to identify any resources that you might have, strategies, different things like that to get you across the finish line. And again, this all is going to be unique to you. You may need to adjust your budget to align your spending with your goals. I have plenty of folks that say, Jason, just tell me what I can spend. If you tell me what I can spend, I'll adjust my lifestyle to that because I just really want to retire. Or on the other side of the coin, hey, I want to spend X. When can I retire? Well, let's look at that. These are things that can be managed and can be determined. And I'm a big fan of automated saving. So for those of you that are 401k savers, that's an automated version of saving. But I'm really a big fan of, even if you're not saving for a 401k, maybe it's for a vacation, we have a separate savings account where you automate that savings each month. So for example, if you say, hey, I want to save $6,000 to go on vacation next June, well, then you need to set up an automatic transfer to an account of $500 per month to hit that $6,000 by the end of that 12 months, right? So don't overcomplicate this stuff. It's not that hard, but you just need to take some time and get clear and sit down, and do that. So again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out or post them. Next is monitoring, adjusting, and seeking support. So the big thing to do is you want to actually track your progress, right? So I personally do a Sunday review. Every Sunday at about 4 o'clock, I sit down and kind of review where I'm at with my goals, what my week looks like, am I making progress towards those goals? I would say you want to at least do this quarterly for yourself, is to sit down and track your progress. How are you doing on your budget? How have your investments done? Are you actually making those steps towards the goals that you've written down? Next thing here is be flexible. Life is going to throw us curveballs. be prepared to adjust your plan as needed because things come up that are unexpected. It's just life, right? And again, if you need professional guidance, consider consulting a financial advisor or, for personalized advice and support. It's always good to have someone in your corner with that. And the final thing in this section I want to have you remember is that setting and achieving financial goals is an ongoing process. By following these steps, you can gain clarity, control, and confidence as you approach this new an exciting chapter in your life. Retirement should be exciting, not anxiety inducing. So if you're feeling anxiety or stress around this, I really recommend you reach out and get some help, because should be a process of, settling into the next stage, and maybe a little bit of anxiety, but it really should be more exciting. Okay, so if you're waiting more on anxiety than you are exciting, then you need to get some help. If you're waiting more on the exciting versus anxiety, then you might be doing okay. So we're getting close to the end here, but I want to give you some thoughts here on just simplifying your investment portfolio and retirement savings. I see so many people over and over just with way overcomplicated financial situations. So I'm going to talk to you about some of the common things that I see. And again, this is not financial advice, okay? But these are just things that I see very commonly. The first one is too many funds. I pulled up, I was reviewing a portfolio actually this last week for somebody who was looking at getting some help. And they had them at a particular company. I'm not going to mention the company. But these accounts were $100,000 accounts, okay? And these accounts had 16 different ETFs in a $100,000 account. It's just completely unnecessary. And when I was sitting with the potential client, I was asking them, so how often does your advisor sit down with you and help you understand like what you have, or how things are doing, and what your strategy is? And they said they've never really done that. And honestly, when I looked at it, I'm like, well, what they're doing here with 16 funds, I could probably do with 6 to 8. At least cut your life in half, as far as the complexity. But you can really have, as little as one fund if you wanted to, which is a target date fund. I don't really recommend those after retirement or in retirement. Prior to retirement, I think they're fine. But I'll get to those in a second. The second thing is having too many accounts. I see people with 3 or 4 different Roth IRAs, 3 or 4 different traditional IRAs, 3 or 4 different 401ks or 403bs that are just scattered everywhere. Don't really think you need to do that. You really need one pre-tax account for all your pre-tax money, one post-tax account for for any sort of like taxable brokerage account, and then one tax-free account for your Roth accounts, right? And that might be per spouse, but you don't need to have 10 to 15 accounts. Some people say, well, what if this company or that company goes out of business? These things, I understand there are concerns. There is insurance in place with SIPC. But if you think about the scale, of some of these companies where they're managing billions of dollars, I think Vanguard is over $1 trillion now or something. But, there are safeguards in place. And honestly, I've never heard of somebody losing their whole account anywhere. Maybe you have, but I just don't think you need to have accounts at 3 or 4 different custodians just to split up your money because you're worried about, losing something. So that's one big mistake I see. Next one here is on target dates. So I said to target date or not, right? Target date funds are meant to be an all-in-one solution. So if you are somebody who has you have a target date fund, and then you have an S&P 500 fund, or you have another small cap fund, if you are intentionally trying to tilt, okay, because usually a target date fund is just a market-based fund, right? It's going to be about 60% US, about 40% international, whatever number of bonds you have in there. It's going to be somewhere in that range. And there definitely are differences between target date funds. So you can't just say pick a target date fund, because some target date funds are a lot more aggressive than others. You want to make sure that fund aligns with the risk tolerance. But in general, they're relatively low cost, they're relatively simple, and they auto adjust, right? So there are some benefits to those. But in retirement, I think you want to have some money in what we call 3 simple buckets. So you have money in a safe type of fund where you can really see that separately, because the target date funds with the long-term bonds, they just got crushed in 2022. But if you have some short-term bonds that you can pull from in the meantime, or cash, then that's how you want to fund your early years of retirement. You want to keep that money very safe. And then money you might not need for 5 years or more, that can be more of a moderate bucket. But money you don't need for 10 or 15 years or more, I think that should be money that's more invested for growth. And if you have all your money in a target date fund, number one, it's just going to keep going more and more conservative over time. And maybe that's not what you need. Maybe it is, but for most people, what I find is those funds do not align perfectly with their risk tolerance, their timeline, and their goals. But it is better than nothing. And if you don't know what you're doing, I think it's fine. But what I don't want to see is 3 or 4 target date funds thinking you're diversified, or having a target date fund and now you have an S&P 500 fund, you have another large cap stock fund, and then some small cap funds. It's just kind of a mess, right? It's really not the way you want to do it. The other thing as well with funds is you want to look through and see, do you have funds that are overlapping, right? A lot of times what I'll see is people have 3 different large cap US funds thinking they're diversified. And in reality, those funds are 98% the same. So they're the same companies. And so you'll have 3 or 4 funds to manage that are all doing the same thing. And there's just no way you can keep up on all that. I don't see any rational person keeping up on a 16 fund portfolio that has 2% differences between the different funds. It's just kind of crazy. So these are some things to think about there. Next is considering your risk. So if you're within 5 years of retirement, remember that your portfolio should be in that what we call the preservation stage. I see a lot of people skip the preservation stage. They go from fully growth portfolio and they say, okay, now I'm in retirement. Now they want to reduce their risk. But what can happen is just like in 2022. Again, this is just a couple of years ago, where the market dropped significantly for a year. And I saw a lot of people wanting to delay retirement because they didn't have the right money in the right buckets. The way we work with clients is, hey, what's your comfort level and how many years do we want to put in a secure bucket? And most people are comfortable with somewhere between 2 to 5 years. That's kind of the normal. I don't really recommend going over 5 years. But if you have at least 2 or 3 years of money that's in kind of a separate war chest, kind of safety type of fund, then if the market's down for a little while, that's fine. You don't have to take that money out of there. We're just going to draw from your safety bucket. That's okay. But if you're within 5 years of retirement, we want to have a safe landing and make sure everything goes smoothly. And it's totally fine, by the way, to be a little bit conservative before retirement. Then as you get into retirement, and then you start taking your fixed income sources like maybe pensions or Social Security, you can actually increase your equities later down the road if you want to increase your growth. Because at that time, once you have more fixed income, you may be able to take more risk. But if you're drawing solely from your portfolio, it's really not worth the extra little bit of gain you might get versus the downside risk you could be facing if you have a super aggressive portfolio prior to going into retirement. So consider that preservation stage. Consider thinking about having a soft landing. Another mistake that I see there. And then the last thing is, considering global investing. So these last about 13 years or so, the U.S. has definitely outpaced global investing. But if you go back from January 2000 to 2009, having a global portfolio was much better than having everything like a S&P 500 fund. The S&P 500 from January 2000 to December 2009 returned negative 0.9% average, which means you lost money over 10 years. And so if you were drawing out your portfolio during that time and you're all in the S&P, this is where we saw that sequence of returns come in and people having problems with potentially running out of money. If you had a global portfolio, on average, depending on how you're invested, of course, you probably could have kept on drawing your 4 or 5% per year and still had more money by the end of that 10-year period than you did when you started. So a lot of people don't know how to invest globally or how to integrate that appropriately, but during times of turbulence, global investing has been helpful to reduce volatility and recovery time. So these are some of the things that I've just seen lately. I look at a lot of stuff with a lot of different prospective clients that I just want to share with you what I'm seeing, and maybe you can relate to this and might help you out there. So as we're wrapping up here, I want to remind you that simplicity is the ultimate sophistication in personal finance. By decluttering your financial life, by focusing on what truly matters, you unlock the power to reduce stress, gain clarity, and achieve your goals with greater ease. Just as a tidy home brings peace of mind, a streamlined portfolio and a clear financial plan can pave the way to a more confident, fulfilling future. So I want the big picture today is just to get everything together, get everything organized, simplified, get everything in one place so that you can go into this next stage or continue in your stage feeling more at peace and having more ease. That's what I want for you, okay? So that's what I have for you today. I really thank you for joining today. I really appreciate you joining today. Really means a lot. You're willing to show up and learn and invest in yourselves. And so if you are in our Facebook groups, I want to invite you. Go in and share. For people that didn't show up today, go in and make a comment or make a post of what you're going to do and what they missed out on potentially. I would love for you to share your wins. Like if you took something from today and you go home and put it in a place, come and share a win in one of our Facebook groups. We do have 2, and there is a lot of overlap, by the way, but I created them separately for a reason. So you're welcome to join both. But our retirement planning for beginners group, that is intended to be much more like simple, very basic type of things. And our retirement coach group, you're going to see me in there doing a lot more things that are a lot more advanced. So we'll talk a lot more about tax planning there, more advanced investment strategies, but that can be over the head for a lot of people. And so the retirement planning for beginners group is meant to keep things more simple. I would love for you to join our communities if you haven't yet. If you already have, then wonderful. Please share something you took away today. Share one of your wins. And if you actually go get yourself organized, I think it was Pam was making margaritas. Pam, you owe me a comment saying, hey, okay, Jason, I had my margarita. It was great. But I actually went through and got everything organized. I'm all done and everything's looking beautiful. I would love to hear that from you. That really makes me feel good that you actually put something into practice because obviously, we're not charging for this. I just want you to do something that moves your life forward. I want you to win. I want you to get more clear and have more peace in your life. And I know if I just help enough people with this, and everything else takes care of itself on the business side, right? If you have questions, if you want to reach out, my email address is right there. It's at info@keepitsimplefinancial.com. You should have gotten some emails from me. If you didn't get the checklist, just shoot me an email. We'll send it back over for you. It's no problem at all. I will be sending a follow-up email to make sure you got the link to copy our digital file system. And also I will resend the checklist for you so you can have that there. And I'll also put in the link on how to scan your documents if you're using an iPhone. I think there's the same thing if you use an Android. I just don't use an Android. So most everybody I think I talk to has at least an iPad or an iPhone. If you're purely Android, you might have to do a Google search on that, but they all have some sort of app to do that. So other than that, folks, that's what I have for you today.
Subscribe now.